Two more names are linked to the White Sox manager opening. Let's discuss who they are next on Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the FanSided Network, and also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode, subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already, and also follow or subscribe to the show at wherever you get your podcasts. Well, SoxMachine.com's Josh Nelson and James Fegan revealed two more names linked to the Sox manager job that I wanted to go over in the first segment. Then it might actually be hard to pinpoint exactly when the 2024 season, kind of spiraled out of control, but let's try. And finally, way back Wednesday, let's discuss the overlooked 1917 World Series winning Chicago White Sox. And you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, so when I read the two names that SoxMachine.com's Josh Nelson and James Fegan recently reported as being linked to the Sox job, I first blew a sigh of relief because this has no ties to the shadow GM, Tony La Russa. And sadly, you and I must trust Chris Getz to get things turned around, and I discussed it on yesterday's show. But if he's going to be the man in charge, then let him be the man in charge, and let's get rid of the shadow GM and team advisor, Tony La Russa. And I'm sorry to repeat it, but the only way I want Tony involved at all in this process is after speaking with as many candidates as possible, and I want Chris Getz to speak to as many candidates as possible, since you don't really need to make a decision until after the World Series ends, because that's when the offseason officially begins. So why not get as many free interviews in as you can, get as many ideas, talk to as many people as you can. Just make sure you have a good process to narrow it down to the correct guy. And if going through that process yields Skip Schumacher as the guy, then yes, bring in Tony to close the deal because those two have a close relationship. Otherwise, get Tony out of the way, because so far his ideas are yielding names like Phil Nevin and Daniel Descalso. And yes, I might jump to conclusions, Matt, with both of those, but they have ties, and those are two reported names that have been leaked out that the Sox are interested in. Phil Nevin, with his ties to Tony La Russa when they were together in the Arizona Diamondbacks organization, and Daniel Descalso, his first manager was, ding, 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 Tony La Russa. But when I hear the Sox are dreaming of Will Venable, even though it's highly unlikely he's leaving Texas because he's the assumed successor of Bruce Bochy, and Texas is a non-dysfunctional organization. They spend money. They make the big trades. They won a World Series last year. I don't think he's leaving that for the South Side. And, with Schumacher continually being discussed as the top candidate, and Fegan did confirm that he is a top candidate, I begin to think that maybe Chris Getz actually has a clue. And maybe he's trying to push Tony out of the way. Yeah, I'll interview Phil, and yeah, I'll interview Descalso. Fine, I'll do you a favor, Tony. But I'm going this route. I'm thinking big. I'm trying to take a big swing to find my partner to help turn things around. And according to Nelson and Fegan, the Sox are interested in Detroit Tigers bench coach George Lombard and San Diego Padres assistant to GM AJ Ellis. And even though they would be first-time managers, I actually love the idea of these two. Especially if Skip says no, I prefer these two over Clayton McAuliffe. First, let's discuss Lombard. He's been the Tigers bench coach for the past 4 seasons for AJ Hinch, who should be the White Sox manager right darn now. But no, Jerry Reinsdorf had to make up for the regret of firing Tony La Russa in the 80s and bringing back Tony. And the White Sox have known nothing but awfulness since his return. And don't give me that 2021 AL Central title. Everydayers know. Any manager would have won with that talent. And also, nothing went well after that ball landed in the Iowa cornfield in the Field of Dreams game. Tony got taken to the woodshed by Dusty Baker in the ALDS, okay? So, yeah, it was nice to have that little, have that title. But you know what? Ever since then, it was 81 and 81. It's been 100 losses, and now it's been 121 losses ever since he's been back with the club. Anyways, getting back. According to The Athletic, Lombard almost got the Tigers job as he interviewed for it in 2020. And it is one of the reasons Hinch actually asked him to be the bench coach after being the Dodgers' first base coach. And here's some snippets from that 2022 piece that gets me excited about him. All right, here's what's written. He is the guy behind the scenes that's the Tigers bench coach who helps everything run. A part of spring training is classroom work, science, positioning, relays, base running. Lombard was the perfect guy to lead those sessions. He's energetic and intelligent, competitive, but locked into all the smallest details. His players, though, will tell you he's a catalyst for all the positive developments in the organization. Such a catalyst that he might not be around a whole lot longer. Quote, we're lucky to have him because he's going to be the next guy to get a big league managing job, outfielder Robbie Grossman said. I'm trying to soak up as much information as I can, as much information, as much of his personality as I can, end quote. I'm going to skip ahead. In addition to serving as Lynch's right-hand man in the dugout, Lombard also works as the Tigers' de facto outfield and base running coach. Last season, you could often see him roaming around a visiting ballpark with a young outfielder explaining each angle of the stadium, how the ball bounces off the wall, where to play and where not to play. Last year in spring training, prize prospect Riley Green, now a very good baseball player for the Tigers, back to the piece, took quite a liking to Lombard. Even before he was a candidate to make the MLB roster, he was drawn to Lombard's enthusiasm, his knowledge, his ability to connect. Quote, first of all, he's an awesome guy, Green said. He's always full of energy. The vibes are always good. Just the knowledge he has up there in his head is amazing, end quote. Lombard has plenty of experience to draw from. He played 6 years in the big leagues and spent time managing in the lower rungs of the Red Sox system, as well as working in player development roles for the Red Sox and Braves before his time with the Dodgers. Lombard even went back to school to obtain an online psychology degree while he was working in the minor leagues. All right, back to commentary. I'm excited just even reading one article about him. I mean, think about it. This guy has been part of winning organizations, a good teacher, and he's also studied at the side of AJ Hinch, who is a very forward-thinking manager. AJ Hinch is a plus-war manager who The Athletic laid out expects all of his coaches to actually coach. And especially a bench coach who has to help him with the big picture and the small picture. It's kind of hard to say, hey, can you also run the outfield? Can you also run base running? And one of the biggest things that the Sox have been terrible at is running the bases. So why not bring in a guy like him? I would love for that to be added to the Sox. And think about it. A division rival's bench coach who knows all your problems, who should know all your problems, who's played against you, who might actually have a vision and a well-rounded background and played in the big leagues. That's like the anti-Pedro. AJ Ellis is also an outside-the-box name, in my opinion, that gives me hope that, hey, Getz is at least checking on all of his boxes, and why not think outside the box? He's a former big league catcher who, as Fegan wrote, Ellis's career was so defined by the pitch framing, game planning, and on-field awareness that made him Clayton Kershaw's preferred catcher during a 9-year run with the Dodgers. That is probably a surprise for many to know that he ended his career in 2018 with their division rival in San Diego, and he hasn't left the Padres organization since. The Padres added Ellis to their baseball operations staff in 2019 in a role that's hard to pin down or collect testimonials for, but it has included plenty of roving player development work that wouldn't take much imagination to apply to a young and unestablished White Sox roster. Although Fegan alludes in his write-up on SoxMachine.com, in this case, this cliche is harmless because the White Sox interest in Ellis would be in him to actually manage rather than to be a coach on the field who then winds up coming to bat in the 8th when the game is on the line. Obviously, it's more he might be thinking, Fegan's kind of alluding to that the Sox probably might want to bring him in as an actual coach, but it still can't hurt to interview him. And if he impresses in the interview process, maybe you take the same path as the Guardians did with Stephen Vogt. And Stephen Vogt was out there managing his butt off last night against the Yankees. Also, it cannot hurt to get some ideas from a guy who's been at the side of one of the most aggressive and effective GMs in the game. So I like that they're going with these two names. This is what they should be doing during this process. These two names provide hope that a proper process is actually being followed, and not, and let's not go with Tony's suggestion. Let's not let Tony make the hire unless we all, through the process, it is Skip Schumacher. Then yes, get Tony in the room, get him to make the phone call, get him to tell Jerry, hey, we got to pay this guy, and Skip, I need you, that type of thing. But otherwise, I'm very encouraged by these names, and especially if Skip says no or Clayton McCall, if Skip says no, I would love Lombard to be the next manager. That's a guy, again, with prior manager experience, diversified background, proven teacher, gets the respect of the players. And as we saw, I mean, one of the reasons that the Tigers got so hot, managing, plus WAR managing from AJ Hinch. Maybe it rubs off. I wouldn't mind taking that chance. Well, there are so many data points to go over that led to the White Sox losing 121 games this year. I do want to specifically discuss a few big picture instances and defeats that you can nail down and say, yep, that is going to put the Sox in a position to have a historical losing season that I want to discuss after the break on Locked On White Sox. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. FanDuel is great for futures, props, and parlays. The traditional money spreads, the over-under, and money line, they're fantastic too, but the chance to win big is in the futures, props, and parlays. The Bears are off this Sunday, but say you are hate watching the Packers and want to make some money off of it. The Texans at plus 2.5 and the over of 47.5 is a chance to nearly triple your money at plus 270 if you parlay that. Teams that have eliminated the Milwaukee Brewers from the playoffs typically go to the World Series. The New York Mets are at plus 132 the last time I checked. They're at plus 390 to win the World Series. And you can nearly triple your money if Shohei Ohtani hits a home run in Game 3 of the NLCS tonight, as that is at plus 280. And you can triple your cash if Pete Alonso goes yard, as that is at plus 330. That's FanDuel.com. Welcome back into Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms, so make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple and Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. All right, coming into the 2024 season, everyone knew it was going to be bad. And you just looked at the roster, you knew it was going to be a bad season. I mean, the projections gave the White Sox, I believe, a 0.1% chance of even making the playoffs. And that went to basically nil when they started the season 3-22. But historical losing, that really wasn't on anyone's mind because, come on, it should be impossible to lose more than 120 games in today's day and age. Every dayers would know. I've been discussing that constantly. Like the technology, the data, the analytics should be able to put together a roster that could at least lose 100 games. Can't believe I'm even saying that, but that has been the standard around the White Sox the last two seasons. But somehow the White Sox magically did that, and it was because of all the dysfunction. And part of it was because of also the owner that was well reported last month by places such as The Athletic. And Jesse Rogers is on the ESPN.com. Just great reporting on the Sox dysfunction. With a 3-22 start and 3 double-digit losing streaks, including an AL record tying 21 game skid, is 2 high-level reasons on the U.S. Constitution-sized document of reasons the Sox finished with 121 defeats. But I want to go over a couple instances and defeats that specifically put the Sox on that collision course with this terrible history. April 9th, Yoan Moncada strains his left adductor muscle and is basically never heard from again. And why does that matter? Why does that put the Sox on this collision course for an historical losing season? Well, Eloy Jimenez and Luis Robert Jr. both went on the IL a few days later. Eloy gets injured in Game 3 of the opening series against the Tigers. And then April 6th, Luis Robert Jr. goes down. And then April 9th, Yoan Moncada, running to first base, just tumbles over in pain. You get John Triffin. I'm sorry. He's never going to be Hawk Harrelson, even though he's trying to be. That was like the third game where he gave an oh no. It's going to be a bad season when your new broadcaster signature call is no. But not having those 3 bats, their 3 best bats in the lineup for the entire season, really took out any chance of firepower that the offense had. Also, it showed just how fragile it was to think that those 3 could stay healthy to at least put together a decent lineup. That was a really fragile idea. I mean, it was a long shot to think those 3 could stay healthy, and then you add Andrew Vaughn and Andrew Benintendi to put together at least a decent lineup. that could score runs. And especially when those three went down, the Andrews totally struggling, made the offense completely impotent. They had no chance of being a threat at all. And that's one of the reasons why the losses started to stack up. And while Eloy returned, only to get hurt again, and then returned, he was never able to drive the ball in the air, and he was traded. Luis Robert Jr.'s return had its moments, like him basically beating the Braves with the help of the bullpen in a 1-0 win. But the injury and all that losing robbed him of being an MVP caliber player you and I saw in 2023. I mean, the injury, you could definitely tell that the losing really took its toll on him. You could just tell, and he was a shell of himself from 2023. 2 walk-off losses in April I want to go to then. To me, is the difference between also 121 losses and just falling short. If those games had gone the Sox way, maybe, again, it's 119 losses. The Sox had a 10-inning lead against Cleveland on April 10th, only to give it back in the bottom of the 10th. And then they blew that 5-2 lead against Minnesota on April 23rd over the final 2 innings. So you think about that. You get those two, and while, it's a 5-20 start, not great compared to 3-22, at least maybe you're looking at it okay. In the long run, you finished just short of the record. But the 3 losses I really want to highlight that put the Sox on this collision course with the historic 121 defeats is the 4-3 walk-off loss to the Brewers and the 7-6 walk-off defeat to the Cubs during the first double-digit losing streak that went down in late May and early June. That was part of that brutal 39-game stretch of schedule where just about everything you thought that could go wrong did. I mean, remember, the Sox started to give some hope going into that stretch. I believe they had won 11 of their last 18 games. You were starting to think, okay, they're going to be bad, but maybe they'll be fun bad. But then there was this just tough, brutal 39-game stretch of schedule. And you were thinking, all right, well, can they at least exit with maybe 12 wins, 15 wins? And they barely made it through with hardly any wins. And losing those 2 games helped contribute to a 14-game losing streak. I mean, if they beat the Brewers in that walk-off loss, the losing streak is 9 instead of 14, a record-setting franchise losing streak at that time. And say you don't get that walk-off 7-6 loss, at least you're not setting a franchise record for losing in a row. And you see how if all the bounces go against your team and the team is not able to make its own luck, you get these type of wretched seasons. And then July 22nd, 4-3 walk-off loss to the Texas Rangers during that 21-game losing streak. You win that one, and at least it's a 7-game skid. Also, that series was another indication of how all the team's problems came to a head and kept that losing going. They lost 3 of those 4 games by a run, and they struggled to score runs the entire series, and then the bullpen blows a game. And once that series ended, you got the indication that this losing was going to go beyond just setting the franchise record for defeats. It was going to break the 1962 New York Mets record, which happened. And I just gave you 5 instances where you flip it and you lose only 116 games only. Still bad, but it's not record-setting bad. It's not you are now the standard bearer of losing. You are not, the team that will go down as having the worst season in the modern era. Okay. And again, literal police. Everydayers know this. The 1899 Spiders put all their best players on the other team that the owner had. Okay. They also didn't have technology. They were also still traveling by train. All those factors. There wasn't a lot of modern thinking. You maybe had a scout or 2 in your area. There's a great way now. There's this amazing thing called technology where you can find talent, and the Sox actually chose not to use it in this day and age. So that's why, yes, contextually, it'll be the worst season of all time. All right, well, it's Wednesday, so let's do a way back Wednesday, and let's discuss the overlooked 1917 World Series win, and I'll explain why it's overlooked next on Locked On White Sox. One of my favorite memories growing up was going to game one of the 1993 ALCS when the Sox faced the Toronto Blue Jays. Sure, the end result wasn't great and Michael Jordan's retirement leaked out, but it was a neat memory I have going to the game with my dad. And if you ever want to get to an MLB postseason game to make some memories, I would suggest using the Game Time app. Game Time is the authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last minute deals, all-in prices fused from your seat and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. You can also use the Game Time app to get great prices for prime seats to the upcoming Chicago Blackhawks home opener. From the app that features a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. So you can actually check out to see, am I going to get an obstructed view? What's it look like? That type of stuff. Save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats for you. Game Time makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets and more with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Prize Picks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Prize Picks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When your picks hit, you can get your money in as quick as 15 minutes. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including Illinois, Wisconsin, Iowa, Michigan, and Indiana. So let's see. Fun and simple concept with a chance to double your money if your picks hit. And I can get my money quickly and use it pretty much in any state in the Midwest. Sign me up and sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all my everydayers. Appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Also recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox or wherever they get their podcasts, as the show is also available on all major podcast platforms. Got a lot of, recently we've got actually a lot of non-Sox fans tuning into the show, which I really appreciate because, some of them are fascinated by just how bad the Sox are. And I really encourage you to stick around. Hopefully I can entertain you. Maybe adopt the White Sox as your pity team. You look at them and like, well, couldn't be worse. Could be worse. I'm going to check out the show to see, could it be worse? Yep, still is. And that's why I'm here. Here to entertain, here to inform, here to challenge you, here to discuss baseball. And also feel free to email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. All right, so the White Sox won the 1917 World Series 117 years ago yesterday. They beat the New York Giants 4-2 in that series. Then the Sox did not win another World Series for 88 years. And really, that's all about that's ever been discussed about the 1917 World Series victory. That it's a footnote. It took 88 years for the Sox to win another one. And growing up as a Sox fan, at least that it felt like a footnote in history to me. Okay, just growing up a fan. And maybe it's just me. And also the fact that time has passed on to make it a footnote. I mean, it's been 117, actually 107 years. I'm sorry. Did I say 117? Yeah. I meant to say 107 years ago. That means my grandma would be 107 if she was still alive today. So that shows you time's passed. My grandma was born in 1917. So just saying. But growing up a Sox fan, like I said, it just felt like this footnote. Felt like, well, the Sox won the World Series in 1917. And it's never been really discussed much in team history, at least not on the same level as 1906. When the White Sox won the World Series, the hitless wonders, and it was a World Series win over the crosstown rival Chicago Cubs, and it's the only red line World Series ever in city history. And certainly the 2005 World Series is celebrated since it broke the 88-year drought, unexpectedly, I might add. mean, come on. Did you think after trading Carlos Lee for Scott Pasenik, the Sox would then just roll onto the World Series? I sure didn't. Maybe it's just me. But it wasn't, after constantly losing to the Minnesota Twins coming up second, it really felt like the Sox going to roll to the World Series. And then remember that second half nosedive and, the Cleveland clearly getting close, a game and a half in September. You thought they're going to blow it. Here we go. And then they just rolled to the World Series. So kind of unexpected. And especially how impressive they did it. 11-1. You're never going to see starting pitching like that. You're never going to see a manager let his 4 starting pitchers pitch 4 complete games. And also, you had ESPN trying to bury it during the 2016 Cubs run. Kind of keeps it fresh and memorable. Plus, who knows if the Sox will ever get back to the World Series? It'd be nice for it to happen at least a few more times in my lifetime. Would be nice. Really enjoyed the feeling that, and especially if they win it, it was really nice for them to win it in 2005. Would be kind of neat. But that 1917 World Series has just always been a mention. The 88-year drought of one of the city's major league teams, and also was the last time, before 2005, that any of the city's 2 professional teams won a World Series. But yet, the 1919 White Sox gets way more romance than the 1917 White Sox, and the 1919 White Sox threw the World Series. Talked about it a couple shows ago. It's also glossed over in the 8-man out story. Shoeless Joe Jackson, Eddie Seacock, Eddie Collins, and Buck Weaver, they were all in the 1917 team. We make it sound like it's this tragedy that, they were throwing out, especially Shoeless Joe, who, said he knew about it, but didn't throw it. But he did, before he was banned for life, he did at least win a World Series. And one of the things I think that history overlooks is that 1917 should have been the start of a dynasty. We should be looking back at 1917 as the start of a run that rivaled the Yankees. Because think about how loaded that Sox team was. If you look at it, again, the 8-man out, it shows like there were some great baseball players that eventually got thrown, banned for life because they threw the 1919 World Series. But the Sox had a great team, had the makings of a great team. And had they not thrown the 1919 World Series, maybe won it, you're talking about the beginnings of a dynasty in the early parts of the Sox franchise history. And also the series itself had some tension. The Sox kicked it off by going up 2-0 by winning game 1, 2-1, and then game 2, 7-2 at Old Comiskey. It goes to New York. The Giants blank the Sox over the next 2 games, 2-0 and 5-0. So the series is tied 2-2. The Sox actually have to come back to win game 5, 8-5. And then they won game 6, 4-2 for the World Series win. And think about this. Eddie Collins hit 409 in the series, while Shoeless Joe hit 305. Red Faber won 3 of the 4 World Series games. He's the credited winner. 1 in relief in game 5, and then he pitched game 6 on 2 days rest. I mean, again, that goes back to the old timers. Starters should go like they were. I mean, that's what they used to do. In 2020, ESPN ranked that World Series the 68th best World Series of all time based on their metrics. 2005 was ranked 36th, and 1906 was ranked 81st. But 1917 just never had the romance of beating the 1906 Cubs that won a record 116 games, nor that amazing 11-1 run to the championship like 2005. Again, let's just hope the Sox can get back to the World Series at some point in our lifetimes, and not only get back, but win it. All right, well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every aspect of the playoff picture. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And I'll be back tomorrow with a power ranking of the no manager candidates and hoping a couple more names get added to the list. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion regarding 2 new manager names being added to the candidate list, a couple of specific instances of the season that pointed toward a historic losing season, and way back Wednesday going over the 1917 World Series. You can leave those comments at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dub, or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day. I will see you tomorrow.